Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. It's still October. It's still 2020. I just bummed myself out. And we're still here to bring you all that pop culture and nerd news, and it's still the same three of us as always. I am Illeagle 86, and I am, of course, joined by my fantastic co-hosts and great friends, Nerdbomber and Techtic. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, look at that. You guys both followed instructions today. Nerdbomber has cautioned me that this episode is going to go badly. I want to say that right up front.
It's allergy season, man.
Yeah. She's under the weather, so to speak. What does under the weather mean? Can we talk about that for a second?
I mean,
you're always under the weather.
If you have allergies, maybe it's like you're under crappy weather. Because I know for me, like this time of year when it gets really rainy and cloudy and there's a lot of like leaves decomposing, I'm more so allergic to trees than anything else. So like when they're pollinating or when they're decomposing, I'm screwed. So like this weather makes me under, so maybe that's what it means. I have no idea though.
I'm constantly on the phone with the wambulance for her.
I take my allergy medicine and my nasal spray and drink a lot of tea, and that's usually how I get through it. I just have raspy voice. Although I guess some would say that the raspy voice is more radio friendly.
It hits me more in the spring. I have seasonal allergies as well. It hits me more in the spring. I never take anything because I'm very stubborn. I'm one of those people, if I have a headache, my girlfriend's like, take some Advil. And I just look at her and I'm like, no, I'd rather suffer than
I am the same
take
way,
medication.
and I don't know why.
It's a weird thing. And now we're really digressing. But I mean, let's talk about under the weather for a second, because think of what weather means. We're always under it. Unless we're like flying in a plane, or like it's that, like, you know, that fog that like hangs really low towards the ground during spooky season. Those are the only two times that you're over the weather or like even level with the weather.
I'm going to help you back so we could circle back to reality. When you're under the weather, you just need to weather the storm and move forward. Boom. Let's tell them what our show's about.
Yeah, so you've already given them their takeaway, their inspirational takeaway for the day, so they don't even need to keep listening. But in case they do, we are going to talk about a number of things today. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite shows has been announced for a reboot. I'm very excited about that. Of course, talking about Dexter. We're going to talk about this Michael B. Jordan news with regards to Static Shock, which is a comic book character that I don't know about, but Techtic is going to tell us more about that. And then, of course, the trailer for Monster Hunter came out this past week, and Milla Jovovich, that's her name, she's back. She's done with Resident Evil, I guess, and she's decided what's the next video game franchise that I can be involved in, and she has chosen Monster Hunter. So we'll talk about that. We'll break down that trailer. But first, I do want to talk about Dexter, because I'm very... I don't think either of you have watched Dexter. Am I correct?
I have not watched Dexter.
That's correct.
So Dexter, for those who have not watched it, very simple premise, very brilliant premise. It's a serial killer who kills serial killers. He doesn't necessarily kill serial killers. He kills killers, right? He has this code that he goes by where he is a psychopath, basically, so he feels the need to shed blood at all times, but he reserves the time to do that, the act of doing that, on people who truly deserve it, that's his whole mantra, I guess.
So he's a vigilante.
He's a vigilante, exactly. That's a great way to put it. This show ran for 8 seasons. It was on Showtime back in, had to be the early 2000s, probably the mid 2000s up through like 2012, 2013. I actually don't know off the top of my head. Ran for 8 seasons. And then the season 8 finale, I won't get into the spoilers here in case anyone wants to rewatch it or watch it before the reboot starts. It is typically hailed as one of the worst endings of any show. Like, it's one of you ever read listicles that are like, what show ended the worst? Everyone's like, Game of Thrones, Dexter. It's like stuff like that. Dexter ended terribly. As someone who is a huge fan of the show, I can admit wholeheartedly it had a terrible ending. Again, I won't get into the spoilers associated with it, but it had a terrible ending. And pretty much since it's ended, kind of for that reason, you know, I've seen people saying bring Game of Thrones back and just redo season 8, and that show like just ended. And granted, that's not the situation here with Dexter. With Dexter, they are actually bringing it back as a continuation from where Dexter left off at the end of season 8. So I guess that in itself is kind of a spoiler. He's not dead. Obviously, they couldn't bring it back if he was dead.
I heard that they were going to pick up like several years after it ended, so it won't be like right when the show ended. It won't like immediately continue, but it'll be like a future look at what's going on now. Right.
So it actually. My understanding is that it's going to actually be chronologically accurate in the sense that Dexter ran from 2006 to 2013. I do have that information in front of me now, and they're looking at having it set 8 years in the future. So presumably a lot has happened to Dexter by that point. Again, I can't get into the details of where you left him, but we'll have a lot to catch up on. We'll have a lot of things to reacquaint ourselves with in terms of the character. He's one of my favorite characters in television ever. I mean, this is mostly just me gushing right now, but season 4 of Dexter is peak television for let me ask you guys this. What's the best season of dramatic television, not comedy, dramatic television you've ever watched?
Because does a dramedy count?
On a case-by-case basis, I know you're going to say Chuck. I would probably count Chuck. I knew you were going to say
I was going to say Breaking Bad, if we're talking dramas that are really captivating.
Breaking Bad's a common answer. Breaking Bad's definitely in my top 5. I think that was also season 4. The season with Gus Fring was the best season. But season 4 of Dexter is, oh man, this was a show that I binged in college. College is the best time to binge anything, by the way. I don't want to distract people from their studies, but
I would kind of disagree though. During a pandemic, not to always bring that into it, but I've binged a lot.
Relax, you're going to give us homework. We're going to walk away having to watch Dexter.
I think Dexter actually is on Netflix too. It has been for the longest time. It would be one of those situations where they just took it off if it's not there anymore. Great show for spooky season also, by the way. I mean, it's about serial killers. It's, at times gruesome, at times eerie at the very least. This is a guy who talks very casually about killing people. He works as a forensic analyst, blood spatter analyst for the Miami Police Department. So he's working on the inside. He has a sister who is a police officer who doesn't know that he's a serial killer. It's just it's so good. I could not be more excited about this. They're bringing back the original showrunner, who was actually the showrunner and executive producer of seasons 1 through 4, and left at season 5, and that's where things started to go downhill for the show. Kind of like an Aaron Sorkin West Wing situation, if you're also a West Wing fan. But that guy is coming back. It's what people at Showtime are saying. What I think the president of Showtime is saying is basically, we've wanted for a long time to bring this back, but we didn't have the right story for it, and now we do. And it's coming back. Of course, Michael C. Hall is coming back for it.
I mean, I think this kind of follows a trend, and we've seen, because this came out, Dexter premiered, it was the mid-2000s, something like that, right?
2006 to 2013.
And we've seen a lot of shows from the late 90s and mid-2000s kind of have a little bit of a reboot. We've seen Veronica Mars got a movie, right? And another season. Yeah. Both almost, I want to say. We saw Psych obviously made a comeback with Peacock, and there's another show that's on the tip of my tongue that also got a comeback season. So I feel like it's kind of a trend where people are looking back at these shows very fondly, and maybe they didn't end exactly the way that they wanted, or there's still more juice left to squeeze, and they just either didn't get renewed or they didn't have the actors all together and they had different conflicts, so they had to wrap the show up. So it'll be interesting, because I don't think this is the only show that we're going to see have some sort of revival. I know even the cast of Community, they've been talking about doing a movie finally, eventually.
Yeah, and 6 seasons in a movie. That's a great show.
Yeah, I feel like there's a slew of revivals on the horizon, so this might be the first domino to really fall before we see the onslaught of them.
Well, so and another recent bullet point, and I think what you might have been reaching for, because I think last week we talked about covering it, or we at least mentioned it in passing when we were going through our planning. The West Wing just had and granted that was a one-off revival, but that was a show that, again, I think that premiered in 98 or 99, but it ran well into the 2000s. That was I'll talk about that in my update for the week, but that was great. And I do agree. I think, this also started back with Fuller House and stuff too, where companies, I shouldn't say companies, broadcast companies are realizing that there's a real place for nostalgia in terms of creating programming that, coming up with new ideas is often probably a lot harder than saying, let's get this cast back together, and even if we get a season out of it, people will show up and they will watch because they love these characters that we did something right before. So I'm obviously super into this.
Now they just need to get Chuck to get either a movie or another season, because I've been waiting. They keep talking about it and they keep teasing me, but give me another season.
Well, so I was going to, you kind of segued into, I was going to ask, I know this piece of news, to be quite frank, is really for me, because I'm so excited about this show, and this is one of my favorite shows. But to ask the two of you, Techtic and Nerdbomber, Techtic, you've been brooding over there. I can feel it. If you could bring back one show for one more season, what show would it be? And I know, again, the common thing, even though it's so recent, I've heard so much, bring back Game of Thrones. And in that case, it's to fix it. I'm not saying to fix it. I'm saying bring it back to get another taste. Either a chronologically accurate one or just, okay, right from the fade out of the last episode, we come and we fade back in and it's right where we left them. Either of those would work for me. Nerdbomber, I assume you're going to say Chuck. You're going to stick with that?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, that is the show that I've watched many, many times at this point. And every time I finish watching it, I'm like, I appreciate the way that the show ended. It took me a little bit to kind of appreciate it. I was very salty about the way the show ended at first, but like there's some artistic intent there. But now I just want a continuation. And for me, at least, I feel like the cast of Chuck talks about it enough where I feel just like strung along at this point. There have been petitions and they're always like, oh yeah, we're like, this is definitely something we're going to be interested in. We just need to find the right time for everyone to come together and do this.
Right.
Just like, well, come together and do it already. So they just had the table read. Actually, it was a few months ago. They did a virtual table read of one of the episodes, and just the cast chemistry is still there. And the show, I think, would really, because what I really liked about Chuck, and I don't want to go on too much of a tangent here because I know I have talked about this at length in the past, but it was drama to a degree, but also very lighthearted. And I think at the heart of it, it had a really good message about family values at the end of the day and like what it means to be a good person and stuff like that. And I feel like that's the kind of show that people need right now. That's the kind of show that people want, I feel like. Mm-hmm. So I think it would be a perfect time to revive it. So if any of you Chuck fans / actors are out there, please just bring it back. One season. That's all I want.
Do Chuck fans have an, like, you know how like Beyonce fans are called the Beehive and stuff? Like, do Chuck fans have a name? Like, are they called like the Chucksters or something? I don't know.
Yeah, they're the Chucksters living in the land of Bimoria.
I did not know. Wait, did I actually get it? Or are you?
No, that's 100% correct.
Oh, yeah. Wow. All right. Well, Techtic, you've been quiet. You can bring back any show for one season, a one-off. It could be Ren and Stimpy for all I care.
There's a reason I was quiet, and that's because I always get nervous when shows are brought back for either some weird spinoff or to continue on a season, because there's a reason that this nostalgia is so cherished, because it just was good the way it was and does not need to be touched. Similar to like, say, Friends, where they can just replay the episodes and tons of people are watching. It's just a good quality show. Don't change it. Don't add to it. But if I had to pick something to be, quote, rebooted, I'm going to go with the live action remake from my childhood. And I'm going to say it, Danny Phantom. I was singing it literally before we got on this podcast. And it was a great show. And it would do great as a live action show.
He did ask Nerdbomber and myself if either of us knew the theme song. The answer was no for both of us.
Bumps. Folks, it bumps.
You heard it here first. It bumps.
I remember a lot of Nickelodeon show theme songs. Like I remember Chalk Zone and Cat Dog and Angry Beavers and SpongeBob, obviously. But like, I don't know why Danny Phantom, really nothing about that show stands out to me except that he had white hair when he turned into a phantom.
Let me hit you with this. A different kind of banger, I suspect, from the Danny Phantom theme song. As Told by Ginger. Did you guys watch As Told by Ginger? Oh, yeah.
That was such a good show.
Macy Gray did the theme song for that.
What a classic.
A+.
You guys are lame.
Actually, did you watch The Weekenders too at all?
That was on a different channel.
Yeah, that was Disney, not Nickelodeon, but still like the same vein. Boy. As Told by Ginger and The Weekenders felt like slice of life for preteens. You know, there was nothing like super crazy about it. It was just like kids hanging out, kind of like Recess almost.
Well, and like, I don't remember, but I'm sure Ginger liked boys because that's, and she told us about him. She literally told us. It was, we were hearing things as told by Ginger. That was the whole show.
It was basically animated Lizzie McGuire.
Right, exactly. Which incidentally, Lizzie McGuire had an animated counterpart.
That's right.
Which was interesting. In any case, Techtic, you make a great point, I think. I mean, I'm obviously excited as a super fan of the show, but some things should stay dead. And like, I do think we've actually seen some shows in an interesting way.
Not stay dead, stay as is. Like I said, these great shows are going to be replayed forever.
Stay alive as ghosts? I don't really know what the metaphor is, but when you think about shows like what Scrubs tried to do, Scrubs tried to jump, and granted, this wasn't a reboot or revival or anything. It all happened pretty contiguously, I think. But they ended their show, and then it tried to jump networks and essentially recast the main characters in mentor roles to younger characters, and it just completely didn't work. And I think to a certain extent, the last season of Parks and Rec struggled for similar reasons in that it time jumped to 7 years in the future. So I don't remember exactly how long it was, but they did that and things got weird because they started making a lot of referential jokes to things that they wished would happen, I guess. And I wasn't as a fan of Parks and Rec, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. But
what?
Rebooting, I didn't care for it. You liked it? You loved it?
Wait, are you saying you weren't the biggest fan of Parks and Rec or the biggest fan of that season?
Okay. That season. I love Parks and Rec.
I was going to say, we can't be friends anymore. You have to get out.
Love Parks and Rec. Chris Traeger is literally one of the best characters in any mockumentary style show. But yeah, I think it's rebooting shows like this, and granted, those are kind of different examples, but rebooting shows in the way that they're looking to reboot Dexter, it's a delicate thing. But what the messaging is from Showtime at this point is we were waiting for a good idea and we have one. And that gives me confidence because you can't just bring it back. You need a reason. And I think they always knew that. I think the showrunner knew that. I think Michael C. Hall knew that. I think the network knew that. Just the ending being crappy isn't a good enough reason. And it sounds like they've found a good enough reason, and I have faith in that. But we'll see what happens. We want to hear from all of our listeners who are Dexter fans or not Dexter fans, just who wants to talk about reboots on the Twitter sphere. We're doing a call out to the social medias. We have at Online Warriors 1, our main show account. We have at OW86, that's me, of course. At OW Techtic, which is Techtic, and at OW Nerdbomber, which is also Techtic. Just kidding. It's Nerdbomber. Wouldn't that be great, though, if Techtic just ran both of those accounts? What if he ran all three of the accounts and just role-played as each of us?
I wouldn't do that.
You will do it because we're going to start an experiment. And it's kind of being ruined by me announcing it on the air, but I want to see if you ran our Twitter, all three of our Twitters for a week, if anyone would notice and be like, hey, this is not Nerdbomber. This is a totally Techtic thing to say, and, call you out on it.
I feel like he would just go on my account, though, and say, wiener, 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 wiener.
No, I just talk about how handsome Techtic is.
I think Techtic's sense of humor is less wiener, 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 and more dad joke pun, like a dad joke pun love child. Don't get me wrong.
Isn't a dad joke a pun? So wouldn't it just be dad joke?
I don't think dad jokes are always puns. But now we're really digressing. Anyways, hit us up on the social medias. That's the whole point of what I started trying to say. And now we will talk a little bit less about Techtic's sense of humor and a little bit more about Static Shock, in which I will turn it over to Techtic as our resident DC Comics expert. The news this week from Warner Brothers is that they're working on a Static Shock flick, and not only are they working on one, they announced on Friday that Michael B. Jordan will be producing or starring in or both. I'm actually not clear.
It just said
what
producing.
I have in front of me is producing.
It hasn't announced that he's starring in it. So,
but it's like a Tom Cruise situation, probably.
Yeah, that's my gut feel with it. But either way, I wouldn't be disappointed.
I mean, knowing nothing about the character, and I'm sure you can give us the rundown here, but knowing nothing about the character, I would ask you, do you see Michael B. Jordan as, let me make sure I get the name right, a Virgil Hawkins, which is the coolest name ever, by the way.
So I'd like them to do a young Virgil Hawkins when he just gets his powers, basically a reboot of the cartoon, not when he's like the age that Michael B. Jordan is. I think he might be too old for that, but it might work. But the reason why I'm particularly excited, well, first and foremost, if you don't know who Static Shock is, basically he's a kid in a town that this explosion goes off, and it gives a lot of the people in the town extraordinary abilities, and he got static shock ability. It's pretty straightforward from there. But what's so good about this character, and specifically in my experience, the cartoon that I grew up with, is the lessons that it taught people. It wasn't just a superhero show. It taught people about bullying and how what its effects can be. It taught people about feeling ostracized and to like embrace who you are and have hobbies and love yourself. And it even touched on racism. Like it touched on all these different things, and it was just such a well-developed show that on Saturday morning cartoons, I learned a lesson, guys. That's incredible.
So and I'm Googling now. This was on the WB,
Yep.
which I was not a WB child. It obviously sounds like you were. I missed this completely. I don't know anything about this character. tell me about his. I mean, I feel like his powers are pretty self-explanatory. He's just an electro boy. Is that? I mean,
yeah, basically,
is that right?
He can use both static discharge as well as static attraction. So he like hovers around on this cool board, so he can kind of fly leveraging basically electronic pulses. And it's really cool power, really powerful person. And but it's not so much that I want to focus on the power and more what the show stood for and the things that it accomplished. And if they can recreate that, that's exciting. And beyond that, even the bad guys had character development and became good guys. There was just tons of relationships, tons of potential within that city, Detroit, that it's bound to be successful, in my opinion.
So I want to go back. You said you didn't want to focus on the powers, and that's a point well taken. But I have to go back to the static electricity thing. Does he have to like move his feet back and forth on a rug really quick?
No, he doesn't.
Touch a doorknob to get that happens to you guys, right? I mean, it happens to everybody. That's how electricity works. But he always has basically a field of electricity around him at all times, and you said it allows him to even levitate. That's what I'm hearing.
Using his board.
That's pretty sweet. I mean, I will also say Detroit, like when you think about, and this is data that I want that I don't have. When you map out all of the superheroes that exist in comic book media, I mean, of course there are fictional cities like Gotham, but Spider-Man's in New York City. There's got to be somebody in Chicago. Detroit's a relatively underrepresented city in terms of comic books, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about a lot of like outside of New York and like major towns in California or something like that, for the most part, superheroes tend to make up their own cities. Like if you look at Metropolis or Gotham, like they usually just slap a fake name on a city. So I think Detroit is really interesting because, I mean, even just looking at real life Detroit, I mean, I think has got one of the highest crime rates. Whether that's true or false, I have no idea. But I feel like that was true at some point.
And the show focused on things like that, how there were people who already had a life of crime now, and I guess it's no different than Gotham, now have these extraordinary abilities. And it's just such a good show. I can just gush about it.
I am really excited about the choice for Michael B. Jordan to produce this because I feel like, I mean, we've already seen him in the superhero realm. He played
Killmonger.
He played Killmonger, but he was also Johnny Storm.
He was the Human Torch.
Human
yeah.
Torch. So he's already had a role in the superhero realm. And so it'll be interesting to see what he can do from the other side of the camera. And I feel like he is really in touch with a lot of the social issues that are going on today. I mean, he was in Just Mercy recently, and I thought that was a really great film that shed light on a lot of
meant to watch that.
Terrible social issues. It was really good. It was free on streaming services across the board a while back. So definitely recommend if you have the chance to catch that movie. And I feel like he's just very in touch, and especially too, like he's a younger actor. It's not like some old guy trying to make this hip young superhero kid in touch with a young audience. Like I feel like he'll do a good job in bringing the superhero to life and really having a good pulse on social issues that need to be addressed with this show.
And the best part about the show, too, was his best friend was an avid tinkerer and made all sorts of gadgets. That was really cool.
That's you, man.
That's me. I'm Virgil's best friend.
But in an ideal world, you would be the hero and not the sidekick in a comic book.
No, I'd be the sidekick in this instance. I'd love to hang out with Static Shock all day.
So I've done some research in the interim as you both were speaking. There are a lot of actual cities that exist in the DC universe, and I'm specific to the DC universe at this point. But did you guys know that Wonder Woman had Boston as her home base for a while? Techtic, I assume you probably knew that. I had no idea.
I didn't know that either, to be honest.
I thought
Doom
that was
Patrol,
touched on in the movie.
I think it was. I think the gold dome of the State House, I think they showed it in the movie at one point. Doom Patrol, which we just interviewed.
Stephanie Chikowski, Hammerhead.
Stephanie Chikowski. They're actually in Kansas City, Missouri. So there's actually a lot of cities, and as I said, Detroit. Well, so Cyborg is from Detroit. John Stewart. These are people I don't know. I'm just listing them now. Firestorm, Vixen. Simon
Green
Baz?
Lantern is John
Baz?
Stewart. I don't know.
Speaking of Green, Seattle is apparently the home base of Green Arrow. So there's a lot of fictional cities, of course, but there are also actual cities through which comic book characters are fairly scattered. That's all. That's just DC. I don't have the Marvel data in front of me, but I would be curious to see, I guess, graphically, where are the hot zones for superheroes and what cities are in need of superhero depictions. I'd be curious about that. But I'm a Michael B. Jordan fan. To get back to the crux of the matter, this can only be seen as good news to people like you, Techtic, who are fans of this show, and also to people who are fans of Michael B. Jordan. I mean, obviously Fantastic Four didn't work out, but he was great as Killmonger.
And I don't necessarily put what happened with Fantastic Four at the feet of any of the actors. I feel like the story was just kind of subpar.
Yeah,
you can only do so much as an actor with a subpar story.
You guys saw that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see pretty much every major superhero release pretty close to when it comes out.
Yeah. I do love, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things surrounding Black Panther 2, but like at the time of watching Black Panther, I was upset. I mean, obviously, this is a kind of a spoiler, but at this point, if you didn't see Black Panther, you're not going to. Killmonger had to die, but I was still sad to see it because he was such a great character and he was so well portrayed. I can only hope that Michael B. Jordan will bring the same, obviously not the same kind of villainy, but the same kind of passion to Static Shock. But we will see. As far as I know, there's no release date tacked onto this yet. This is more just a reassurance in the form of star power, tacked onto it that this is happening. So get hyped, WB Saturday cartoon lineup fans. I never did the Saturday cartoon thing, but that's a
really
topic. It's a topic for another time. No, not really. I mean, I guess maybe Nickelodeon would, if it happened at all, it was on Nickelodeon, but I think on Saturday mornings I was probably playing video games, thinking about my younger self. In any case, we're going to take a short break now, but before we do, of course, it is that time of the episode. We need to shout out our fantastic Patreon producer and friend, Mr. Ben Checkness. Ben, here's looking at you, kid. You've been supporting us for quite a while now, and we really appreciate it, and we would encourage any of our listeners to be like Ben. I was going to say BLB, but that's very, very vague as an acronym, so I'll just say be like Ben. Instead, I'll say the full thing. Ben supports us on Patreon, and he supports us at the night level, which is the highest of our 3 levels. And as a result, he gets this producer shout-out. He gets input into our weekly game segment, and he also, of course, gets access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and he's going to be coming on the show again at some point as part of his, I think, quarterly appearances on the show. So something for all of us to look forward to. So you want to be like Ben, you want to hit us up at the night level, but if you don't quite feel like doing that, you can also hit us up at the Squire level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, or you can be a page. If your name is Paige, you could be a page. So a lot of people are named Paige out there. Maybe you want a Patreon level named after you, and we've figured that out for you. Pages get access to the monthly secret segment. So for all the details on all of these levels and how to support us, you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast for more of the details. We would appreciate any support. We love doing this. Hopefully you love listening. And we'll thank Ben for now, and we'll head to the break. But when we get back, we will be talking about Monster Hunter.
What's up, nerds? This is Rich, the host of the 3 Fat Nerds podcast. I would like to invite you to check out our podcast. We have 2 shows every week, and both of our shows are about everything that is pop culture and nerdom. That's right, we talk about movies, we talk about comics, we talk about video games, we talk about role-playing games, we talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and so much more. You can find us anywhere you get podcasts just by searching 3 Fat Nerds. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and like our page on Facebook, 3 Fat Nerds Podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 3 Fat Nerds Pod. And of course, you can check out our website, 8122productions.com. Most importantly, I hope you enjoy the show. With that being said, there's only one thing left to say. That's later, nerds.
All right, we're back to talk about Monster Hunter. Now, we got an official trailer for Monster Hunter. This was last week, or it might have even been a little bit longer ago than last week. Looks like it was 6 days ago, according to YouTube, at the time of this recording. But I have not played Monster Hunter, and I'm not sure if either of you guys have, but I will say I had a specific idea of what Monster Hunter was, and it is not what was in this trailer. Did that opinion strike either of you as well?
So I played it, and
you've played it. Okay, so
yes.
I defer to you. Go ahead.
Boy, is that game challenging. It had what is in Monster Hunter, but not the vibe that I got. So you're not this soldier that got teleported into this world. You're already in this world,
Right.
fighting as your own militia, so to speak. So that side of it's different, but the side of it where we saw a number of monsters and a number of weapons that were seemingly created from parts of slayed monsters, that's absolutely in the game. And that's what I found exciting. I actually recognized a few of the creatures that I took down myself.
Oh, gosh.
But the thing that excited me the most, like I said, and the detail taken from it was the weapons that we saw that, again, are taken from these creatures.
But are there guns? That's what threw me, because I see the big swords and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's my idea of Monster Hunter, is you're fighting a monster with a sword or maybe a bow and arrow or like some kind of medievalish weapon. But these guys and girls are Marines, are soldiers of some kind who get teleported back. So they're like, especially in the early going, they're like firing rocket launchers at these things. That was
yeah,
the part
but
that
if you
struck me
notice,
as,
they
like,
weren't effective. What was effective was
Right.
when you
Monster
saw the weapons made from the monsters,
right.
because those have elemental effects and things like that.
So yeah, like I said, I have not played this game. This struck me as a Battleship kind of thing. Remember Battleship? Remember that movie Battleship that came out? That,
Yeah.
Like no one saw, and it wasn't very good. I mean, obviously, I
They
hope
made a
Monster Hunter
sequel.
does better than that.
Didn't
made
they make a
sequel to
sequel?
Battleship?
I thought they did.
I would be absolutely shocked. That movie completely bombed. Rihanna was in it.
Maybe it
Taylor
was like
Kitsch.
one of those movies, like a parody that makes fun of how bad it was.
Could have been. I mean, I would imagine there's more. I mean, the premise of Battleship as a movie is terrible, right? Because there's no story of the game Battleship. You're just playing Battleship. Monster Hunter presumably has a story, and it has a deeper world to draw from. But I think the big connection, the one I made was, okay, you have the military and like aliens or like some kind of cosmic thing happens, and that was where the parallel came in for me. But I mean, it certainly looks cool. It certainly looks like it could be good. I mean, again, we've talked about many times before, we're in a world now where Sonic showed us that video game movies can succeed. So this won't be the last adaptation we see.
For me, so the military part threw me off completely because I haven't played Monster Hunter, but I watched Techtic play Monster Hunter, and I always mean to. And so I've watched a lot of gameplay clips, and like you guys said, this looks nothing like the game in terms of all of the crazy tanks and military gear. But I think what they're trying to go for, and it might succeed, is having like a crossover audience. Because yeah, there's a lot of people who will go see this because they've played Monster Hunter games and they want to go see the movie or the game translated to the big screen. But if you don't know anything about video games, and Monster Hunter, while it's like well known in gaming enthusiast circles, I feel like your regular casual gamers don't really know anything about it for the most part. I mean, it's
Right.
not like your top tier. It's not like a Fortnite or something like that where everybody knows what it is. So if you want to have that widespread appeal, they probably threw that stuff in because now if you don't know anything about video games, if you don't know anything about Monster Hunter, it just kind of looks like an action game. And I mean, we saw World of Warcraft. I think it didn't do very well because I mean, everyone knows what World of Warcraft is, so I think there might have been some barrier to entry there. If you didn't play it, you felt like you weren't going to understand the movie. But it was so fantastical, and for whatever reason, it didn't have that widespread draw like something like Lord of the Rings would have. I think people just wrote it off as like another video game movie, whereas this one, people may not know that it's based off a video game at all, and some of the actors were recognizable. Obviously, you don't have a lot of like A-list actors. They're all kind of like B-list actors here, but I think T.I. is in this, right?
T.I., Tony Jaa, Mila Jovovich are.
I mean,
the three
people might
people.
see just the general military action violence sort of aspect to it and be like, oh, this looks pretty cool. So I think it's smart, but as someone who actually knows what Monster Hunter is, I really hope they don't lean too heavily into it. But I feel like they're going to because that's what all of your main actors are part of.
I could tell you right now it's going to piss me off because every single battle is a grind. I mean, there's no health bar. You're just hitting, hoping this is the last hit, and it never is. And so what I feel like I'm going to see is she comes in, she hacks and slashes, and 3 hits later takes down this huge monster, and I'm just like, nah.
That's kind of how movies work. I mean, I think so. Nerdbomber, I think you're right. I think they're probably catering to a generic action audience, and I would even further hone that into what I will call the oorah audience of like, I think people are going to see, they're soldiers and they're fighting big aliens. Yeah, man, they're going to go see it. And I think that's just fine, to be clear. But I think it's interesting what you're saying, Techtic. Now, my exposure to Monster Hunter, again, I haven't played it, but I had a roommate in college. Shout out to Matt. Don't think he's listening. But he got Monster Hunter Tri, which is some Monster Hunter game for the Wii U, I think in my junior year and his senior year of college. And my dorm had this setup where it was actually an apartment with a shared common area, like a kitchen and living room, and we all had our own bedrooms. But to walk to my bedroom, I had to walk by his bedroom, and he more often than not had his door open. And I think for an entire semester, I did not see him move from the chair that he played Monster Hunter Tri in. I mean, it was honestly impressive. I don't even know if he went to the bathroom. So this game can clearly be engrossing. I don't know. I could see it being good. I could certainly see Techtic. It sounds like you think it's going to be bad.
I feel like it's going to be really campy.
It's going to be bad because exactly. I couldn't agree with Nerdbomber more. It's going to give me the same Battleship vibes.
Yeah, I could certainly see that happening. I mean, every movie tries to be a franchise now too, which scares me for something like this. Mila Jovovich, though, I mean, I think I mentioned this before, but let's just take a moment. She has been a part of the Resident Evil franchise for probably decades now, right? And hasn't done a whole lot else that I know of. And now she's like, all right, that one's dead. Next video game franchise. Let's see what I can do with this one. That's kind of cool. At least to me, it's kind of cool. And I know Monster Hunter is on a bit of an upswing right now because I think there was a recent Nintendo Direct where they revealed the next Monster Hunter and people are very excited about it. So we'll be on the lookout. I don't know if we have, I'm sure we do have a release date for this. I just don't know what it is. This is from Sony Pictures Entertainment, and the release date, December 30th, 2020 is when this is due to hit theaters. So be on the lookout for that. Ron Perlman's also in this. I feel like we should mention that in passing.
Was he in the trailer at all?
I don't think so, but I Googled it in the cast, and he's the Admiral, which sounds like an important role. So be on the lookout for Hellboy in this movie. So yeah, we'll move on from this for right now, but be on the lookout for Monster Hunter coming soon. And by soon, I mean December 30th. So we are now at the point of the show where it's time for What Are You Up To Wednesday. Time for us to talk about what we've been up to for the past week. And I'm actually going to go first today because I have a couple of things to run down. A movie recommendation, a show recommendation are the two main things. So the movie recommendation is The Trial of the Chicago 7. This is a movie that's available for free right now on Netflix. It came out last Friday. Written and directed by Aaron Sorkin. Now, I mentioned Aaron Sorkin before. I'm a huge West Wing fan. I love his writing. He also wrote The Social Network, if you've seen that movie. Huge fan of his. He also wrote A Few Good Men, which is an Academy Award-winning movie. This movie is a courtroom drama based on actual events that happened in the 1960s and, as you can imagine, are very culturally relevant today. So I would recommend it to anyone who likes period pieces and also likes courtroom dramas. I didn't love Molly's Game, which was Aaron Sorkin's other directing effort, but I like this one way more, and it's free. As Netflix movies go, in my opinion, it's above the cut, which I think we typically say on this show is mediocre. I think this is above mediocre for sure. Staying on Netflix for the show, The Haunting of Bly Manor, guys. I might be a little bit late on this one, but my girlfriend and I are blasting through this one right now. It's an easy binge, 9 episodes. We didn't love Haunting of Hill House, actually, but we're liking Haunting of Bly Manor quite a bit more. We'll probably finish that in the next day or so, at which point we will move on to the latest set of Unsolved Mysteries, which also just came out yesterday. So busy TV time for us, which I certainly don't hate that. Yeah, that's the summary of things for me. I'll turn it over to Nerdbomber to take us away next.
All right, so 2 things that I wanted to discuss. The first one was we watched Love and Monsters, which was a movie that just came out actually this
Dylan
weekend.
O'Brien.
Yes. And it had a hefty price point, actually, like a lot of these home premieres do now. It was $20, but I had heard a lot of good things, and we were looking for something to watch that wasn't a horror movie. And a lot of the stuff that's been coming out lately for a lot of the streaming channels have been like horror movies, and I just wasn't in the mood for that. So we rented Love and Monsters, and I will say it was actually really good. I went in expecting like a combination of Zombieland with some kind of monster movie, and that is pretty much exactly what I got.
Evolution is the monster movie you're looking for, I'm telling you.
Isn't it also kind of rom-com-y? I watched the trailer.
Not really.
Like, it's kind of like, you know how in Zombieland there is that like underlying romantic subplot, but like it's a reason to be, but it doesn't drive the entire movie, if that makes sense. Like it gives
This is
him
the whole
the
premise
reason.
that he has to like go and find his girlfriend that he said they would be together, and then
Well, it's like
tragedy
that's the
happens.
setup for the movie, but a lot of the movie is really just how he grows and how he learns to survive. And there's actually a lot of like he finds a dog along the way. He hooks up with 2 other travelers, and by hook up I mean like he finds and travels
Yeah.
with for a little bit. Not actually
Definitely
hooks up.
clarify that. Yeah.
Yeah, but like Michael Rooker is in it, and Michael Rooker basically plays the
Tallahassee.
Tallahassee. Yeah.
yeah, he definitely plays like the Tallahassee type character in this movie. And it's a fun movie. It's like a nice little finding yourself and learning to like trust your inner instincts and go out and strive for adventure type movie. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very lighthearted. Like there was some fun action sequences. The humor was right up my alley. So I would definitely recommend. I don't know if I would necessarily spend $20 for it, but I also like to support movies. So that's the thing. So I would definitely recommend though. If you liked stuff like Zombieland, definitely check it out. Because yeah, the humor and stuff was right up my alley. I was a little bit disappointed that Michael Rooker didn't have as big of a part of the movie, but like I don't want to get into spoilers, but he could have been in it a little bit more, but that's just my fault.
I find myself liking Dylan O'Brien a lot, even though I've only seen him in one movie, and it was like a very average movie. I just like him. I just like his face and just the way he is, you know?
I think I've actually give him a lot of commendation because I think the last role that he did before this movie was the last Maze Runner movie. And if I remember correctly, he got into a really bad accident on set. And I know one of the headlines surrounding this movie was that he was actually like, he didn't know whether he would ever want to do another movie again because it kind of shook him up a little bit and he didn't know if he could trust doing stunt work and stuff. So even for that reason alone, supporting an actor kind of jumping back in the saddle and doing his thing, I think it's another good reason to see this movie because he was very good in it. I think he was a very likable character. So did a good job at that. And then the other thing that I've been doing is continuing to play Doom Eternal. And I will say I did have to turn down the difficulty finally in a couple levels because I was just grinding at the same portion of the game and I was out of ammo. So every time it would I would die and it would reload me back to having no ammo and no gasoline to get more ammo by chopping up demons. And it was just very frustrating. So I turned...
It's very brave of you to admit turning the difficulty level down in a podcast, by the way.
You know, there is nothing wrong, and I firmly believe this. There is nothing wrong with turning the difficulty level down because at the end of the day, I'm not an esport athlete. Like, I'm here to play fun. Blah, blah, blah.
You're here to play fun.
I'm here to play fun.
Okay. And we all are. We all should be, I think.
Yeah. Like, I have nobody watching me play this game. It's purely for my own enjoyment. And so, like, I can talk about it here, but, like, mostly for my own enjoyment. So when I found myself getting really frustrated and wanting to just, like, rage quit instead of rage quitting, I just turned the difficulty down. And then when I got to the next level, I turned it back up. And you know what? It was fine. And I didn't even lose an achievement because there's no level-based achievements in the game. So it's all good. But, I mean, it's fun. It's longer than the first game, definitely. I feel like when I was playing the first Doom 2016, I was done by this point. And I am not done yet. I feel like I still have a decent chunk of game left to go. And I think I haven't doubled the time that I've spent with the first Doom, but I think I'm right about at the length that I played Doom 2016. And I know I have like at least another 5 levels left to go. So I don't know if it's overstaying its welcome at this point. I think I had just set my expectations for a shorter game, but like it's, in terms of gameplay, it's almost flawless. I know I talked about this a little bit last week, but like the gameplay aspect itself is pretty much flawless. I'm enjoying it. I'm ready to move on.
Game length is a tricky thing because like I love The Last of Us 2 and I talked about this on the podcast, but that game might have overstayed its welcome. It's a delicate balance, I think. Games like that have to find, and that game was also particularly difficult. And there was a grind, as you're describing with Doom Eternal. So I totally get where you're coming from. Keep us updated.
We will. I hope to hopefully have it done by next week so that I can just move on to something else, just because I'm ready.
Yeah, I think there might be new video game activity on my horizon soon. I've been sticking with Everspace, but I think that ship is in the process of sailing. So I guess I'll tack that onto my update, and I'll say stay tuned. Techtic, you've been quiet. What do you have for us?
So we finally finished up Schitt's Creek. That was exciting. I wholeheartedly recommend the show to anyone. Lovable cast and crew. They finished the show right when it was at like the best point to finish it. And just a fantastic show. And I think that's an important
lovable
piece.
cast and crew.
Yeah.
What made the crew lovable on screen? I'm just curious.
The crew as in not the main cast, like the supporting actors.
Okay, the assembling. I wasn't sure if like the boom mic guy was like had a cameo or something.
But
I mean, that happened in The Office.
We also watched Warmest Wishes, Best Regards on Netflix, which is a little like goodbye documentary that they did. So we did see a little bit of the crew because we watched that as well.
Which, can I just say, I couldn't imagine being on a show for years and years and then, okay, we're done. See you guys sometime. Like,
Right.
What a heartbreaking career.
Well, and then you have no job too. It's Hollywood's scary that way. I totally agree. I have heard great things about.
I'm sure they're okay financially, but like you build these relationships and it's just like peace, see ya.
It would
I
be
don't know,
like, should Online Warriors ever end? Like the first few Tuesdays would be like, what am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing right now from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night? I don't know what to do with myself.
All right, calm down.
I mean, in terms of like finances, though, like the boom mic guy might be living show to show. I think as far as the cast goes, I think you're probably right that they're doing fine. But it is an interesting business in that regard. But yeah, I did hear really good things about the documentary. I watched the pilot episode this past weekend, but I haven't watched any more of it yet. We have kind of a show jam going on over in this household. We finished Lovecraft Country. We've been watching a lot of heavier shows. We haven't had a whole lot of time for Schitt's Creek, but my girlfriend loves it. I will definitely be watching it, especially now with your recommendation.
And then the other thing I've been working on is finally just editing and finishing up my 1 month out project, not this coming one, but the following one. So what I mean by that is, for those of you who don't know, I try to keep a monthly cadence of a new project so that I can always schedule the previous month's one that I finished on time so that you guys have it at a regular occurrence. So finally finishing up my next one, no spoilers, but you'll probably see spoilers.
I was gonna say, you're not gonna tease anything. You're just gonna say it's coming.
It's a network controlled camera. And the name that was given to us by our Patreon subscriber was the NARC.
Which stands for, am I testing you? Do you not know off the top of your head? It's presumably network something camera, but I don't know what the A and the R are.
Network actuated remote controlled camera, I believe it was.
Oh, 2 C's.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's a NARC.
That's great work by our fans and followers on that one.
Which, by the way, that is something I'm starting. If you become a Patreon, you have an option to throw an acronym in the fire for my monthly projects and see if it gets picked.
The hype is real. Keep us updated. And who's quizzing this week? All I know is it's not me because I hosted last week, so I'm due to lose this week.
I am, in fact, the host today, and I've got a really fun show, and hopefully Techtic doesn't have a little bit of an advantage here, because I know he's been hard at work programming stuff, but
So hard.
I also know that, Illeagle, you do a lot of programming too, so hopefully you guys are an even playing field, because this week's topic is about programming language.
We're nerds.
I'm not sure how you can do Price is Right rules. So
this is going to be Price is Right rules. I dug and had some really fun times making this quiz. So I think we're going to have Techtic start with the first one because I like to give Illeagle a little bit of a handicap just because you went on that bad losing streak. So
I need all the help I can get. Yeah. I'll take it.
So the first question is, according to the online historical encyclopedia of programming languages, how many programming languages have existed and currently exist?
So there's weird variances of one. I'm going to assume that the variances count as their own. I'm going to say 48 unique languages.
Oh, no. This is thousands. I'm going to say 100 to be safe, but it's well over 100.
Okay, so Illeagle, you're right. This is in the thousands. So the online database serves as a roster and a genealogical record of languages, and it lists over 8,945 different programming languages, some dating all the way back to the 18th century.
So I know 5 guys. 5.
Five Guys Burgers?
You're making a really, really good, you're making good progress on learning all of them. I don't think I know 5. I think I know like 3, 4 maybe. I'll count later. I'm on the board.
All right.
6 if you count C and C++, but
those are technically different languages.
Yeah, they're actually quite different if you get into the nuts and bolts.
So
I don't want to fly my nerd flag that hard. Keep going.
Our second question actually kind of revolves around C++. Adobe Flash, aka Shockwave Flash back in the day, was the source of some of the most popular online games and was written in C++. When was the initial release of the Adobe Flash player to play these C++ powered games?
This was, do you just want a year?
Yeah, just a year.
1996.
Techtic, what do you got for us?
No, that's a bust. but I'm going to go low to keep it safe. I'm going to say 1960.
So, Techtic, you actually had no shot at this at all. Illeagle hit it right on the money. It was released January 1st, 1996. So, Illeagle now is leading by 2.
How? How did you know that?
I didn't know it. I touched my gray matter in my brain.
Google.
And I was like, when did I start playing stupid online games? And it was in the late 90s, my friend. At least I think it was.
So, moving on from fun online games and kind of thinking about other web codes and how you would represent some stylistic elements on websites. Hex codes are a way to represent colors in coding through hexadecimal values. How many different possible hex codes exist?
I'm just going to say a cool million.
If we were like computer scientists, this would be something that you could probably like easily figure out. It's going to be something it's you know how things are like 128, 64. It's going to be one of those.
No.
I think you're onto something. I think it's probably over 1 million. But there's a big gap. I'm going to take the under. I'm going to say 128, even though I know that's wrong. I'm going to just hope it's somewhere between that and 1 million.
All right. So Techtic gets his first one here. There are 16,777,216 different possible hex codes to exist.
It doesn't have to do with it. I believe it's 6 characters. Each one can be a different combination of characters.
Right.
It's one of those math it's like factorial or...
I will actually explain it to you because I actually have the little backstory here. So hex codes are written in a standard 6-digit notation, RR, GG, BB, and each pair can contain 256 different values. So using combination math, that's how you get to the 16 million. So Techtic, you were pretty much right on the money. I mean, a few factors of millions away, but right on the money.
Yeah. I mean, I said 128, so I was right in there.
Yeah, but I knew that it was 6, and I knew that it was the combination of all those individual characters.
And then you're like, whatever, that's got to be close to 1 million.
And I knew because of my tinkering with Techtic. Shameless plug.
So we have 2 more real questions and then a bonus question if we need a tiebreaker. So it's 2-1. Techtic can still be in this thing and win it. So the next question is, the C language, not C++, just straight up C, which served as the basics of the Unix operating system, was developed by Dennis M. Ritchie, an employee of AT&T, not a sponsor. In what decade did he develop the language?
What decade? Boy, that's a large window. The 1960s.
Techtic, what you got?
It feels like a really good answer.
Yeah, I feel like it's either 60s or 70s. I'd just go with 70s and hope you're right.
You said he worked for AT&T?
Yes, he did.
And it was the platform for what?
The Unix operating system.
I don't know why this is so stressful. I don't want to lose because I feel like if I get this, then I'm just like out of it. I'm not even getting any like hand signs from Nerdbomber.
Yeah,
we don't do that here.
You're not getting your usual collusion. He's struggling.
I'm gonna go 1950s because you told me to pick 1970s, and I feel like that's...
All right, so you should have listened to Illeagle. It was indeed the 1970s, so he gets a point here. So it is now 3-1.
I tried to help you, man. I tried to help you.
So
I'm an angsty teen. I don't listen when people tell me to do something.
Won't do it, Dad. So we're going to make this interesting. The last couple of weeks we've done this and made the last question a 2-pointer.
I'm for it. Yeah.
Let's do that. What year was the Visual Basic coding language released?
That was 2000.
It was 2000. Okay, you're going late. Isn't Visual Basic the Excel thing? I'm going to say 1990 because I'm just hoping it's before 2000.
All right. Final answer?
Yeah. Final answer.
Illeagle seals the deal here. Microsoft released the language in 1991 to serve as an easy-to-use and to-learn language for applications and software like Excel. So you have taken this one home. As a final little factoid, I'll just tell you guys the answer to the bonus question. Ada Lovelace is considered by many historians to be the first programmer on record, and she was born in 1815. Back in them times.
I didn't realize the 1990s Excel had macros enabled.
Yeah, actually Visual Basic. So I nerded out when I was researching some of this stuff. Visual Basic in its first form actually stopped being supported in 1998, and then they released visualbasic.net, which is what we all know and love today in Excel. And I say love as a broad sense. I don't actually really love it.
I love it. Macros are super handy.
I'm not sure I've ever used Visual Basic or
You've never done macros?
If you ever needed to do a calculation that involves like an iterative loop, that is some sexy stuff, I tell you.
So That was our fun coding quiz. Illeagle is the victorious winner.
I'm the bigger nerd, y'all. This in terms of coding, at least, this cemented it. Boy,
So,
what validation for me.
You get to host next week, and your losing streak of 1 week was snapped. So that has to feel good.
But there's actually a losing streak of 0 weeks because
Oh,
I
that's
hosted
right.
last
Yeah.
week.
You're going to steal my show next? Tinkering with
Stealing your show.
Illeagle. That doesn't even sound good.
I'll come up with a different title sometime between now and next week. But in the meantime, we want to thank all of our listeners for joining us, as hopefully you always do. Tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your baby, tell anyone. If you have a baby, they're not going to understand you, but you can just tell them the name of the podcast. Put little
Don't you want
earbuds in
them
their
to
ears,
be nerd cultured little babies?
Right.
I do.
and we'll call them online babies. We'll shout them all out in our next episode. Seriously, though, thanks everyone for watching. You can hit us up on the Twitter at the handles we mentioned before. The Twitter, not Twitter, the Twitter. It's a different site. And, of course, you can always leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd love to hear from you there as well. But in the meantime, we thank everyone for joining us, and we'll talk at y'all next week.